What's up, guys? It has been a while. So about a little over a month ago, on the 8th of August, I and 3 other crew members set out to North Carolina to begin the first of what would be ultimately 4 specific film shoots, because we were filming the second chapter of the docuseries. The first chapter, of course, called The Method, was about learning the standstill, how to learn to compress your body against a stationary frame, to eventually, to start with having the biomechanics throw the disc for you, and then eventually maybe weaving the arm back in. But the thing about the standstill is, even though it is extremely biomechanically efficient and it's repeatable and you can take it anywhere, it has a cap on it, an energetic cap that would afflict every player, whether they were a small person or a big, strong beefcake. And for most people, even with perfect standstill biomechanics, most people are kind of stuck in the low 60-mile-per-hour range, which introduces the central question: how do you add momentum to that frame? How are you able to produce more energy? How are you able to rev up the system while still keeping the biomechanics intact? That's what Chapter 2 of the Method docuseries is about, and of course it's called, again, Adding Momentum. There's an axiom that I'm fond of repeating. I call it Lee's axiom. And Lee's axiom states that motion without balance is falling, and effort without leverage is wasted. And part 2 of the docuseries, which deals with the idea of adding momentum, addresses that first central problem. Motion without balance is falling. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you are at any point in your biomechanics in a position that your brain considers off balance, if your center of mass is not either perfectly centered in the middle of your feet, or whether or not it is dynamically balanced pressure into the brace on the ground, at any point in the footwork or any point in the swing, if you are off balance, energy bleeds out of the system. It bleeds out not only because your weight tends to be in in 2 places at once, but it also bleeds out because there's a throttling mechanism in your mind that basically says that the less you're balanced, the less hard you can do stuff. Consider if you've ever worked out in a gym and you've done a squat. Let me get in the right position for it. I'm very sore from the gym 2 days ago, actually, and that exact thing. But basically, if you're doing a squat, your body needs to be perfectly aligned. You need to be able to keep your spinal column perfectly aligned. If you're off balance, if you tip forward or backward, the weight becomes almost immediately intractable. You'll feel like you're being crushed underneath it if you're off balance. The same thing is true for lifting weight using the deadlift. The weight needs to move in a straight piston-like motion. If you are forward too far or you're back too far, none of it is going to work. Not only does it not align, but your brain will not trust the position, and it won't give you enough force to actually move the bar, and the bar will feel immobile. The same thing is true in the backhand biomechanics also. If you can't get braced into the ground, and you can't stay balanced at every point in the footwork, your brain throttles the mechanism energetically. And once that starts to happen, as we know, we lose the biomechanical haptic feedback of the disc itself. So when we set out to North Carolina, you notice I got 2 discs in my hand. The Method. It has a new logo, actually. There's the other one. This is a Luna. And we started with 20 of these, and this here is a Trespass, a nearly max weight Trespass, which we kind of just picked out of a long list and affixed them with the logos. When we set out for North Carolina, the goal was to teach the adding momentum system to as many people as possible. And we were hosted on that property at a beautiful place called Neatman Creek Disc Golf Course in northern North Carolina, where Mark Tedder and his wife Caroline basically own and operate a 40-acre property that has one of the most beautiful disc golf courses I've ever seen, just sitting on it. Imagine having that in your backyard. And Mark Tedder, who's become a dear friend of mine, actually, as a consequence of the time we spent together, when Mark and I met at the beginning of the shoot, and it was a 4-day shoot in North Carolina, when he and I met at the beginning of that shoot, Mark could only throw the disc in the high 40-mile-per-hour range, would be my guess, although I didn't radar him. But when he released his drives, and keep in mind, he's a passionate disc golfer. He's been playing for, I think, 8 years, and he has a disc golf course in his backyard. Actually, his entire property is a disc golf course, pretty much. Mark could take this driver and throw it about 220 to 240 feet with perfect shaping if he got the nose just right. That's all he could do, even though he was like 6'4" with huge arms and honestly farm strength. Because he's kind of like a country guy. And Mark saw me work with various other students at the North Carolina shoot who were transformed beyond comprehension and description. I'll talk about a couple of them in a second. But Mark is really at the heart of the story because Mark is 58 years old. And for the last 8 years, nobody has been able to teach Mark the proper biomechanics. He's watched video after video. He's observed pros throwing. His form was capped at around 220 to 240. Nothing could change that. But he watched me coach people for 2 days on set. And on the third day, he and I worked together for the first time, one-on-one. More importantly, I had him do the broom drill. He picked up the broom, he actually unscrewed it out of the brush, and he just had the pole. And he got in this position, got all of his weight over his right leg, and pushed the end of the pole into the ground while obeying that rule that this arm and this arm can't move. And he felt how to brace properly for the first time. And as soon as he and I actually got on the course the next day, I had him just square up on the front of the tee and I had him do the broom drill, only it threw the disc. And he started bombing right on the spot. And a couple days later, Mark tethered on his own property, on his own hole number 1, threw a putter 312 feet, according to UDisc, a putter. And yes, it is a downhill shot, but it's still totally transformed as a consequence of just that one thing that he felt and that one little lesson that he and I did. The method, adding momentum system, and the entire system itself is really a revolutionary thing in this space. The other people that benefited from this, and there was a whole gamut of them, the most impressive of them was a guy named Austin, who was known as kind of like the local bomber. And Austin could throw, my guess is low 60s, but with really, really good nose control and good spin, which means that he could get the disc out to about 450. But he was tentative in his footwork. I watched his form and his biomechanics were beautiful. And so I got him to just intensify his energy. I showed him how to move down the tee pad with intention and balance, perfect balance the whole time, and how to create an offset. He annihilated the disc. He threw it 540 feet in like a beautiful turning anhyzer in the air that flattened out on basically a distance line uphill. And he threw 69 miles an hour on camera, on radar. Utterly incredible. After North Carolina, we went to Michigan. And I'm going to talk about our Michigan outing in the next video. But thank you for watching the introduction. More to come.